Good evening, my name is BOROWSKI and you're watching Poland Daily News. The main question ahead of the Polish parliamentary election is whether the Law and Justice Party will receive enough votes to be able to form a government without a coalition partner. Such a scenario could become reality if the ruling party manages to achieve a result similar to that achieved in recent polls.
There is a week left before the parliamentary elections. TOMASZ, the editor-in-chief of Gazeta Polska, says that the continuation of the independent rule of law and justice is within reach of Jaroslaw Kaczynski's party, but everything is ultimately in the hands of voters. These elections are more difficult than the previous ones. In the previous years, there was a very good deal, because the left made the mistakes of running as a coalition and did not enter, and neither did Korwin. The Law and Justice Party is receiving a significant amount of votes, so today the party must obtain 42% of the voters' support to be sure of the independent rule, and this seems to be possible. This will depend on several thousand voters, whether Law and Justice will have the ability to rule independently or have to look for coalition arrangements, which is proven to not be easy. According to recent polls, Law and Justice can count on the support of more than 40% of voters, and the same would still have a place for the left-wing Civic Coalition and perhaps the Polish Coalition, formed by the Polish People's Party and Kukiz 15 movement and the Confederation. According to publicist Adam Borowski, the credibility of the ruling party will determine the outcome of the election. The credibility of the Law and Justice Party will be decisive. This is the first party which made promises during the elections and realized them afterwards. During their campaigns, many projects were presented and then implemented. I think that this will ultimately decide the outcome of the elections. In the opinion of Samuel Pereira, head of the portal tvp.info, the verdict of the voters will be an assessment of the 4 years of work of the politicians. I think the result of the elections will be determined by the assessment of these 4 years. On the one hand, there is a positive assessment for some voters, and on the other hand, it is negative. However, those voters who negatively evaluate these 4 years do not always want to vote for the Civic Coalition. Deputy Minister of Infrastructure and Development Artur Soboń is convinced that nothing will happen in the last week of the campaign that will significantly affect its course. I believe that society is already shaped today when it comes to their political views. I am deeply convinced that the trust in us is huge, and ultimately we'll see how big it is. However, at the end of the day, in addition to one's views, beliefs and personal readiness to say yes, there is a technical issue. One has to leave their house, take their ID and cast a vote. The election campaign ends on Friday at midnight.
The Polish parliamentary election is just a week away, and according to a new opinion poll by Estymator, the National Conservative Law and Justice Party is expected to win in a landslide, as the party can count on 49.5% of the votes.
According to the Estymator survey, 49.5% of voters would vote for Jaroslaw Kaczynski's party, 26.4% of respondents declared support for the Civic Coalition, while the left can count on 13.1% of votes. The poll shows that the newly appointed Sejm would also include the Polish Coalition, formed by the Polish People's Party and the Kukiz 15 movement, with 6.4% of the votes.
France's anti-terror prosecutor said on Saturday its investigation had detected signs of Islamist radicalization of the Muslim convert from Martinique, who killed 4 police officers in the Paris police headquarters earlier this week. The French authorities have received criticism for initially claiming that the attack was a likely case of workplace violence and not Islamist terror.
France's anti-terror prosecutor Jean-François RICARD revealed during a press conference that the perpetrator had been in contact with well-known Salafists and had expressed admiration for previous terror attacks in France.
La poursuite des investigations a permis de faire apparaître des contacts.
The developments of the investigation allowed us to unveil correspondences among the assailant and several individuals who possibly belonged to the Salafist Islamist movement. Also, several accounts allowed us to shed light on the fact the assailant allegedly adhered to a radical vision of Islam. This leads, at this stage and according to several accounts, to the following elements. First, his approval of certain statements made in the name of this religion, his desire to no longer have any contact with women, his justification, made towards a colleague of the attacks committed in the offices of the Charlie Hebdo newspaper in 2015, and finally the change in his style of clothing that dated back to a couple months ago, with the individual abandoning all Western clothing for traditional attire to go to the mosque. On the same day of the attack, the press informed that the attacker had refused to have any contact with female colleagues at work. Despite this clear sign of Islamist fundamentalism, the French Minister of Interior, Christophe, CASTANER, initially denied that the case had traits of a terror attack. When I look at the administrative records of the assailant, we see the authorization procedure that he received in 2003. It has since been renewed systematically. In his administrative records, he was an agent that had quite good evaluations, as I said on Thursday. He's an agent with recognizable qualities. No element on any type of radicalization had appeared. This man has not hidden the fact that he had converted and had become a Muslim, but it's not because one is Muslim that he is a terrorist. His colleagues knew that he was Muslim. His colleagues knew that in 2014 he married a Muslim woman. The minister is now under heavy fire by opposition parties calling for his resignation. They argue that lax police measures gave way for the attack to take place.
Greece's new Prime Minister, KYRIAKOS MITSOTAKIS, is under increasing pressure to stop the massive increase in new migrant arrivals from Turkey. MITSOTAKIS appeared in Parliament on Friday, accusing Turkey of exploiting Europe's migrant crisis for its own ends.
The Greek Prime Minister told members of Parliament that the Turkish government can and must control migrant flows to Europe. Turkey, as stated in the joint declaration, must also assume its responsibilities. It has the ability to control the flows in the Aegean. It cannot give the impression that this issue is being exploited for its own geopolitical pursuits. Mitsotakis continued by saying that migration to Europe is likely to increase in the coming years and that the challenge must be faced with respect to human dignity and democratic norms. I want to be clear, this issue is here to stay. Europe is and will be a magnet for migration from Asia and Africa. The phenomenon will continue and is likely to intensify, and that is why unity, maturity and planning is needed, even in Parliament, so this is dealt with effectively with a sense of national security, but also with respect to human dignity and democratic norms. The left-wing opposition criticized the Prime Minister for not fully embracing the prospect of even larger migration to Greece. Every time we build walls or fences, like around Moria, on Evros or on the US-Mexico border, whenever we build walls, what we are doing in the name of security for our citizens is that we are poisoning our society. We are creating a new sense of insecurity in the shadow of fences and walls. The German Minister of Interior, Horst Seehofer, claiming to represent the EU as a whole, has travelled to Greece to reassure his Greek counterpart that Greece will not be left on its own with the rising number of new arrivals. First of all, you need to know that I am here not only as the Interior Minister of Germany, but representing the whole of Europe, and by that I mean that if we don't help Greece, if we don't help frontline countries, we will end up with a haphazard migration policy that will lead us to a dead end. It is a dead end that we witnessed in 2015. It is a dead end that we should not have to deal with, and if we are really Europeans, we should know that if we do not handle it with organization, eventually these flows of migrants and refugees will appear scattered, if I may call it that, everywhere in Europe. Germany has in recent weeks intensified its efforts to create a common EU asylum law based on migration relocation quotas for all member states. The proposal is fiercely opposed by a coalition of states in Central Eastern Europe led by Poland and Hungary.
That is all for tonight. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for Poland Daily Business. Good night.